Welcome to the Woodridge Baptist Church podcast. For more information about what's happening in the life of our church, visit our website at www.woodridge.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Hey, happy Father's Day. Everybody, let's give it up for the dads that are out there. Come on. I'm going to invite you to turn to Psalm 127 with me this morning. It's good to be back. Thanks to Hugh for covering for me last week when I was recovering from surgery. I had stents all in my face last week, and I was not in the mood to be here with you. But it's good. It's good to be back, and I'm doing well. Today, I just want to give a word of encouragement, not just to the dads, but especially to the dads, but to moms and to families as well, from Psalm 127. It got me thinking about my own dad this week. I was kind of combing through my phone and looking at some pictures and, seeing images of us together. And, there was one of me and my brothers. I'm the youngest of three sons. And so there we were. And, we were off on a hunting trip together. And it was just a couple of years ago. And those are good times, good times. When I think of my dad, I think of hunting together. I think of fishing. I think of baseball. He was one of my main coaches for a lot of years of my life. And I was thinking particularly to this one time. We were playing this, it was a big tournament. And the storm, which we can understand a little bit about storms this week. I mean, my gosh, how much rain. Anyway, we don't live in Seattle, but you would probably not know that, right? But the storm has blown through and it canceled all the games for one day. And we're just going to restructure everything. We're going to play tomorrow. Okay, so the first game was at 7 in the morning. 7. We played a quadruple header on a Saturday, a quadruple header. The first game started at 7. The last game started at 11:30 at night. Now, here's why I give the story. This was back in the day before cell phones. Does anybody remember a day like that? Dreamy. Anyway, so my dad, an engineer for Union Pacific. This was after he had come back from fighting in Vietnam and decommissioning from the military. He was an engineer for Union Pacific. And we didn't have cell phones, and so he had the pager. Does anybody remember the pager? Right? So I remember his. I didn't have one. I was but a wee lad, right? So there we were. It's 11:30. The game is starting. It had been a long day. We get around the second or third inning, and his pager went off, which meant he had to go to work. So I want you to think about this for just a second. That man had been coaching a bunch of knuckleheads like me all day. Pager goes off. And he hands it off to the assistant coach, which we knew it was coming. I mean, he knew that at some point his pager was going to go off. And off he went to work. No rest, to work. I think of moments like that. And crazy, crazy blessed to have a dad like that. He gave the whole day to me, and then he went to work. I think of another dad. This is actually a member of our church, who works all week, one job, and he works another job on the weekend because his kids are in college. Doing the sacrifice that it takes to see his kids through so that they are better set up for success for what is next for them and what God has for them. So much so that I even dropped off at his work one day and said, he's like, man, what are you doing here? I was like, I'm here to see you. Just to say, you're doing a good work, and I respect you. That was the only reason I was there. He's doing the good work. Thankful for all the good dads. And that's why I said today, I just want to give some encouragement. The truth is, when you think of relationships, we have a lot of relationships to juggle, right? I mean, when you think about it, being a good husband is not the same thing as being a good dad. You could actually be a good husband and kind of dote on your wife all the time and be somewhat negligent to your children. That is possible. And the same goes the other way. Being a good mom doesn't mean that you're a great wife. You could dump all of your love, affection, attention, and energy into your kids and basically not into your husband. When you think about, and this is something that I say to my kids and have for some time, Wendy and I would go on a date, especially when they were little. They're like, where are you going? Like, we're going out on a date. And the reason that we were going on a date, and this is what I said, is because someday we're going to let y'all go, but your mama ain't going anywhere, right? She stays around and y'all leave. That's God's plan, and we're going to honor the plan. In Psalm 127, this is a psalm, what's called a psalm of ascent. And so as we look at this, I just want to encourage us this morning, not just for the dads, but I think for everybody in the family, and even the kids, if you'll take a listen to what's being said here. This is called a song of ascents of Solomon. Now, this is interesting. When you really take a look at it, there are 15 psalms of ascent. And it's debated. One of the things that's debated, and I've kind of provided a picture for you here, is some scholars believe that the Psalm of Ascent corresponded to the 15 steps that would lead to what is called the court of women, as you can see on the picture, to the court of the Israelites. Some think that it was that, but these are psalms, these are songs. Some think that they were sung on the 15 steps as you would process up to the temple by the Levites. And you remember the Levites are the priests. And so maybe the priests, as the people are coming in for like a pilgrimage or a journey of faith, the priests are standing there and they're the ones that are singing the Psalms of Ascent. There are other Old Testament scholars that think a little bit different, that the songs were sung by worshipers on the pilgrimage from wherever they were, whatever village, however far away that was, as they came to Jerusalem. And that's called an ascent because you actually have to ascend to get into the city. So the song or the psalm of ascent. Now, if it's the last one of those, it's for the people as they're coming into the city. The journey could take weeks. You know, it's not like you could Uber over to the city. You had to travel there. So you could see these psalms, these 15 psalms, as almost like their Spotify list on their journey, to get into Jerusalem, maybe for a festival or something like that. Psalm 127 was unique. And one of the reasons that it was unique is because it says of Solomon. And I'm here to tell you, there aren't a lot of those when you look at the Psalms. There's a couple of them, really, that Solomon is actually mentioned in the header of it. There's only a couple of them. So some Old Testament scholars would say this is what we might call a wisdom psalm. And that would make some sense, right? I mean, when you think of what Solomon is known for, he's known for Proverbs. Most Old Testament scholars will say he definitely is the writer of Proverbs. It's questioned whether or not he's the author of Ecclesiastes. But even if he's not, most think that if he didn't write it, he's the object of it. So Solomon's all over that. And then you think of like the Song of Solomon. I mean, wisdom literature. So this would be like a wisdom psalm. And the psalm begins with an important kind of thing to mark here. Kids should have mentors in their life. And the number one mentors for kids is mom and dad. That is by God's design and by God's plan. At our church, we never say that we are here to replace mom and dad in the discipleship of a child. We are here to come and complement you and to help you in the discipleship of your child, but not to replace you. That would be a mistake. Never to replace you, but to come alongside. Think about this when you look in Scripture. I'm just going to give you a few examples. Joshua was Moses' assistant from his youth in Numbers chapter 11. Would it not be amazing to say, who was one of the people that was most influential in raising you up to be the leader that you are? Moses. Are you kidding me? Not everybody can say something like that. That would have been amazing. God called Samuel into the ministry, 1 Samuel 3, when he was a boy. Or David, he was anointed king when he was, according to 1 Samuel 16, when he was a young man. Or just one more example, you might remember, you flip over to the New Testament and you've got Timothy. And Timothy was young enough to be called by Paul, my child. And Paul was the one that takes him under his wing and shows him the ropes, but entrusts the leadership of the church at Ephesus to a young guy. Some people will look at that and go, big mistake, Paul. That's a young guy. And Paul goes, no, I see what God is doing. He's the man for the job. He's just got to grow up in the job. We see this in 1 Timothy 4. In other words, and when we believe this here at Woodridge, we don't think that our children and our youth need to wait to be a leader with their faith. They are leaders already with their faith. Our job is to come alongside them to mature them in their leadership in the faith. and to cut them loose. Think about this in Psalm 127:1. Let's take a look at this. Let's just see what God wants to show us today. In verse 1, it says, unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. You labor in vain. Do I have any Eagles fans out there? And I don't mean Philadelphia Eagles because, hello, come on. Ain't nobody a fan of them. I'm talking about the band, the Eagles. Do I have any Eagles fans out there? So now everybody's like, oh, yes, of course. Y'all were worried about it for a second, weren't you? That had gone down the evil road of the Philadelphia Eagles. No, the Eagles. Don Henley, by the way, he said this last tour, that's it, man. We're done. And I was like, okay. Well, what do? They have this song called Love Will Keep Us Alive. Y'all know the one I'm talking about? It's this nice little sentimental ballad. And, Timothy B. Schmidt, he's the bass guy. He's the one that sings it. He's got these nice kind of vocals and whatnot. And I love the sentiment of the song. But, man, it takes a lot more than love to keep you alive. You need burgers sometime. I mean, you need food and whatnot. But the truth is, what you really need in building a home is God. You need God to build a home. The question that's posed in Psalm 127:1 is really something like this. Is the Lord in what you are building? Not are you building, but is the Lord in what you are building? If you've ever read Jeremiah, there's this amazing verse in Jeremiah 45:5. It says, but as for you, are you seeking great things for yourself? Seek them not. Now, here's what Jeremiah was saying, because he said this to Baruch. But this is what he's actually saying. He never said, don't seek great things. Nobody in here should sit there and go, I'm pretty content with mediocre. I mean, nobody should ever, hey, what are your goals and dreams and aspirations? I don't know, mediocre sounds good to me. Now, we need to be thinking higher and more lofty than that. But what he's pointing out here is he says, are you seeking great things for who? Yourself. Seek them not. Seek them not. Your passion, your calling, what you're building might be good and at the same time empty. This is the word of warning in Psalm 127:1. It's the same idea that you would run into if you were to read Ecclesiastes, where it talks about we're like a vapor that appears for a little while and then we vanish away. The things that you invest in could just be gone. But the things that are of God can never be taken away. Those things are eternal. I love what Francis Chan said. He said, our greatest fear in life should not be of failure, but of succeeding in life in things that don't really matter. That's a keeper. This is why in Psalm 127:1, he goes on to say this, unless the Lord watches over a city, the watchman stays alert in vain. Let me ask you a question. When you think of a father, as we celebrate the dads today, most of us would agree when you say, what are some of the things that immediately come to your mind when you think of a dad? Usually provider comes up, and that's a good thing. Protector usually comes up, and it should. When you think of the word picture that's given in Psalm 127:1, you need to be thinking not just the spiritual protection of your home. You need to be thinking of the physical protection of your home. You need to be thinking of the spiritual protection of your home as well. This is something that's sacred and has been entrusted both to the mom and to the dad for the well-being of their children, who we're going to get to here in a little bit. I want you to remember this, the Great Wall of China. The Great Wall of China was built to defend China from invaders. Everybody knows that. The wall is over 4,000 miles long, over 20 feet high. Its width ranges from, depending on where you're at the wall, 12 feet to 20 feet wide. That's insane. However, the Mongols were able to get through the Great Wall of China and to mount an invasion against them. But they didn't go over the top of the walls. Instead, what they did is they bribed the guards. They bribed the guards. And the guards were the one that let them in. That's a cautionary tale for us. One of the things that we know is that spiritual warfare is real. We know that the family is an object of attack from the enemy. And one of the greatest things that you can do, whether you're dad or whether you're mom, is to be diligent spiritually in the protection of the home. Because I'm telling you, the enemy is there bribing you, telling you to open the gate. He's telling you to open the gate. The kids are worth the staying true to the word and the worship of God. By your example, by your precept. Don't open the wall. Don't open the wall. Because, look at verse 4. When you think of what children are, verse 4 compares them to an arrow. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are the children of one's youth. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. Bow and arrow. I don't know if I have any hunters out there today, but I grew up hunting. And there's a couple of things here. One, you have to be thinking not just about the bow and the arrow, you have to be thinking about the archer. You have to be thinking about the one that's going to be using the bow and the arrow. And when you think about the archer, I mean, the truth is not everyone who has arrows can make them do what they want. When you think about the archer has to know how to use the bow and arrow and how to aim the arrow. The aim matters. Everybody would agree with me on that. The aim matters. Okay, go back to when I was a kid. I was little. So let me off the hook for what I'm about to tell you. So we had a bow and an arrow. We were kind of in my neighborhood. I was out with a group of friends, and with the bow and arrow, I decided I'm going to see how high up I can shoot this thing. So I haven't even finished the story, and you, you guys like, oh, right? So I decided I'm going to shoot this thing, see how high it can go. So I got some friends around me, and I had to pull that thing back, and I'm like, boom, and I let go. And we're all like this. And I kind of looked down for a second, and all of a sudden, all these kids are down there. You know, and I'm like, oh my gosh. Now, I'll admit, that was the first time I ever thought, are there any people down there? First time I thought about it. And to make matters even better, arrows up in the air, and one of the kids that's down there, his mom comes walking out, and that's when I'm like, oh no, right? And the arrow, if you can see where my stand is right there, it lands about right there. Her son was about right where I'm at. I told you, give me a break. Come on. He's fine. He's fine. Now, why do I give an example like that? The mom, after seeing it, went and told my dad. And my dad was a real believer in discipline. You know what I mean? And so it was not a great day for me after that. But here's the point. When you think about an arrow, there are a couple of things that you have to remember. And this is the first. Arrows do not naturally grow in the woods. They don't. Nobody has ever walked through the woods and go, oh my gosh, look at this natural arrow. That has never happened. An arrow is a stick. Well, not nowadays. I mean, you know, they're totally different now, but work with me here. We're going ancient time stuff. They're a stick. They're a stick that have to be crafted until they become smooth and purposeful. So randomly releasing an arrow, back to my moment of glory, randomly releasing an arrow is not safe. It's not safe. Once the arrow is released, it's too late. So Wendy and I, we released Avery about 4 years ago. She's going into her senior year of college. That's kind of hard to believe. I haven't aged a day. When did that happen? Anyway, here in a couple of months, we're going to be releasing Kaylee. Off she goes. In about 3 years, we're empty. The baby is out the door. Lila's out the door. All of them are released. And that's by God's design and by God's plan. Now, I'm always going to be their dad, but my role and my function for them changes. It changes. But here's the thing that's most important to remember today, for me, for all of us, and it's this. Once they're released, we want them ready for what we're releasing them to. Ready for what we're releasing them to. Because once they're out of the house, the consistency of the witness of the mom and the dad, it's less. It's there, but they're not living with us anymore. Y'all know what I'm saying? They're not watching it every day. They're not, hey, that wasn't the best decision in the world. How do we come around and make that right again? Our examples it's there, but it's profoundly different, which brings up the question, by your teaching and example, where are you pointing your arrow? Where are they pointing? If what you're telling your kid is that the worship of God should fit into your otherwise busy schedule, where are you pointing your arrow? I'm reminded of this great quote. Don't know who said it, but it says, prepare your child for the road, not the road for your child. And it's absolutely right. The child is the arrow that is to be shaped and to be molded. There should be no expectation from anyone that everybody in the world just has to work around your kid. That's not the way it works. And honestly, that's a horrible job of parenting. But I'm here first to tell you, parenting is work. It's the best ride. I wouldn't trade it for anything. And a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So let's think about the arrow. Teddy Roosevelt, the president, once said of his 16-year-old, he said, I can either be president of the United States or I can control Alice, but I cannot do both. Can't do both. Somebody's got to step in and help out, right? Old Testament scholar who was doing a commentary on Psalm 127, his name is Derek Kidner. He said this, and it's worth its weight in gold. He said, it is not untypical of God's gifts that first they are liabilities or at least responsibilities before they become obvious assets. The greater their promise, the more likely that these sons and daughters will be a handful before they are a quiverful. Their work. Now, I'm not just saying that of the kids I raise. I would be willing to bet you that if I called my mom and dad and I said, you have the stage on a Sunday morning, they could probably tell you some stories, well beyond the arrow example that I gave you before of what it was like trying to raise me. You know, fits and starts. There were times that they would give wisdom to me and I was like, you know what? I don't care. I don't care. All the parents out there are like, yeah, there's moments like that, right? But then you hope that by your consistency, by your persistence, by your love, and by your example, that it starts to really soak into their heart that you do want good things for them and you're pointing them in the right direction. I want to remind you of something this morning, my friends. Your children, who are the arrows, are meant to be released. They're meant to be released. I've made this joke with my girls. Scripture says you're an arrow, not a boomerang. And I was saying this to Avery not too long ago. You know, she goes into her senior year. I go, Avery, this is awesome. Come next year, you pay all of your bills. And she was like, no, shh. I was like, no, you're an arrow. You're an arrow. I release you. There is a lot of truth to that, though, right? They step into what God has for them. And I think God's going to do some crazy stuff through my kids. I really believe that. All four of them. It's hard to believe. They have the same parents, and they're all so different. They're all so different. Personalities are different. Interests are different. But I look at each of them, and in different ways, I can see how God is going to use them. I can see it. And they're meant to be released into that because God has a purpose for them. My children are not here for my purposes. I am here to help them discover God's purposes for them and to release them into it. Hopefully prepared for it when they go. That's my job. Help them find what God has for them, to discover that. And so in the process, to speak words of encouragement to them. Words of encouragement, more of what they are than what they aren't. Because I want you to think about this. Here's an arrow. Let's take a look at it for just 1 second. Every arrow has parts. And there are reasons that the psalmist is using this example. When you think of the shaft of the arrow, what this would correspond to in every person is the person's identity. It will be your identity. Since every other part of the arrow connects to this, it's really important. And when you think about it, if this isn't straight, then the path flight is going to be wobbly. Or you can think about the feathers, or what's sometimes called the fletching, if you can kind of see that there. The feathers of the arrow are what makes it aerodynamic. but it's also something, when you think of the arrows, that hold it on its path. When you think about what the feathers or the fletching is meant to represent in the 127th Psalm, it's the child's character. This is something that's going to hold them on the path once the arrow is released. If you take a little bit of another look and kind of to the back of the arrow, you can see the knock, or what's called the knock. This is pretty simple. It's just a groove at the end of the arrow that keeps the arrow, pay attention to what I'm saying here, it keeps the arrow in place until the power of the arrow is released. And then, of course, you can look to the bullet point, or what's often called the arrow's tip, and that's the mission of the arrow. That's its mission. I'm confident when it comes to my 4 kids because their giftings are different, their talents are different, their personalities are different. I get all of that. And so kind of like trying to father them or parent them is different from one kid to the next, except with how I'm trying to direct them, how I'm trying to guide them, the example that I'm trying to provide for them. And I'm here to tell you, I've made mistakes. I've made some. I've made a few. They might say more than a few. Okay, we could debate that. That's fine. But this is the thing that I want. As each of them approaches the time in life where it says, and it's time for you to go. One, that they're ready with the content of their character and ready with their mission, the tip of the arrow. And that's what I release them into. With the full expectation that God, wherever he takes them, is going to do incredible things with them. So Teddy Roosevelt, who I quoted before, I want to end with a quote from him, very famous quote. But I think it's a word of encouragement for us today, just to hold fast to the good work. He said, "It's not the critic who counts, not the one who points out how the strong man stumbled or how the doer of deed might have done them better." And by the way, all of you that have put your hands to good work, whether it's parenting or something else, know what it is like to succeed, and you know what it is like to fail. But this is what he goes on to say. He said, "The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred with sweat and dust and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and he spends himself in a worthy cause, who if he wins knows the triumph of high achievement, and who if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat." The fight for your family is worth it. This morning, I just wanted to encourage you. Fathers, to be the best fathers you can be. You'll make mistakes. Keep going. Mothers, to be the best mother that you can be. You will make mistakes. Keep going. Children, you don't have a perfect father or mother. Don't say amen. But if what you have are parents that are consistent in character, godly, they lead you to church, can I encourage you today to put the rebellion down and maybe take a listen to what they have to say? Because I promise you it's coming from a place that's good. So let me get back to my dad, because we're going to go into a time of prayer. And as I was thinking about him, gosh, good guy. I have a lot of thoughts with him, but one that I'm going to share with you. So, engineer for Union Pacific, right, for 40 whatever years before he retired after the military. And he had what we called his grip, which was a big old bag, and it was with all of his work clothes and toiletries and all, and his grip always stayed full, because if his pager went off, or and home when we had the land, the phone would go off and they're like, hey, they would call him to work. He would grab his grip and off he would go. And it was all the clothes that he would need for whatever that trip would be, for how long he was going to be gone. There were a couple of things that were always true in my home. Even when my dad wasn't there, his presence was always there. Even if he physically wasn't there, he was always there. But there was something else, and he never talked about this. This was something that I observed as a kid. When he would go to grab his grip and he would walk out the door, one of the things that he would do, because he had this desk that's like this antique desk in the home, his Bible was always on the top. And he would grab his grip, and before he walked out, he grabbed his Bible and he put it on top of his grip. His Bible went with him every time. Every time. And then you could look at his Bible. That thing was worn out. It was worn out. Here's why I give the example that I do. One, I'm thankful for his example to me. I mean, I'm confident that I would not be who I am today if it weren't for him. And so I'm thankful for his example. But I share it with you because there might be a number of things kind of sitting in here. One is it could be a parent that is sitting there and going, man, the ways I've made mistakes are pretty clear in front of me. Okay, but we all make those. You can kind of follow the word and say, but today is a day of decision. Whereas for me and my house, today, we will serve the Lord. It's as good a day as any. If it hasn't been where you've been, today can be the day where it begins. You can claim that. So maybe it's time to pick it up. Maybe it's time to remember that as a parent, you're the archer and you're going to be releasing an arrow. And you have these years that are precious years of investment into a kid that honestly deserves this from you. They deserve to be shaped and molded into something that God can use in a powerful way. And you go, well, I haven't been. Okay, fine. How about today? How about today?
We hope you have enjoyed the podcast. For more information about our church, visit www.woodridge.org.